Welcome into another edition of the Sherwood Ford Giant pregame show. One more solo show for me, and then I will be back in the office coming up on Monday when the Oilers take on the Sharks. But tonight, it is the Oilers taking on the New York Islanders. Shout out to Sherwood Ford. As always, you can find them on Twitter at Sherwood Ford, on Instagram at Sherwood Ford _ the Giant. The Jay Woodcroft era begins now for the Edmonton Oilers. It is a big night for the team after the coaching change a couple of days ago. If you want a little bit more on that, I do have a YouTube video up on the Nation Network YouTube giving my take on it. But let's go back to last game, the game that ultimately ended the Dave Tippett era in Edmonton, and it was just another flat start for the Edmonton Oilers. They were down 2-0 before you could even turn on the TV, before people were even settled into their seats. It was an ugly one for the Oilers, and actually, after that start, after the ugly start, it kind of felt like they turned things around a little bit. I mean, they started to outshoot the Hawks pretty consistently. They started to get some scoring chances. They hit 3-4 goalposts in that hockey game, but that's not enough. Goalposts do not count on the scoreboard in terms of shots or goals. So it was just a disappointing one for the Oilers. I talked about how that was a game that they absolutely had to win. Like, you can't come out as flat as they did against an opponent that bad when you're in the second half of the season and you're in the middle of a playoff rush. Like, it's just an absolutely unacceptable start, and I think that's part of the reason why we did see a coaching change. It was DeBrincat, then Hagel, the Morinville native, getting on the board early. Leon Draisaitl on the power play eventually found a way to jam one past Marc-Andre Fleury, who was just absolutely sensational in that hockey game. Like, even that goal, I mean, he made the crazy paddle save, and he was just borderline unbeatable in that game. And Laurent Brossoit was good a couple nights ago, but for an Oilers team that has hopes of winning a playoff round this year, I mean, for right now, you would hope they're just focused on getting into the playoffs as well, because that's far from a given. You cannot go back-to-back home games with one goal scored. Just so much from that game was absolutely unacceptable. I didn't love the decision to go with Mike Smith, which was a bit of a surprise, as we found out later in the afternoon. Like, I did this whole pregame show talking about how Stuart Skinner's going to get the start. That makes sense. I'm hoping he grabs the net and runs with it. And for some reason, they go with the 39-year-old who's been hurt for the majority of the season in the second of back-to-backs, which is pretty much never a good idea when you look at the numbers. And he made some big saves, but again, starting the game on time. You want your goalie to make a couple of big saves early, maybe, when you stumble out of the gates like the Oilers have for a while now. But you want your goalie to be there for you, and Mike Smith absolutely was not. So a predictable result, because I think anyone, if you would have told anyone, hey, the Oilers are going to start Mike Smith once again, second of back-to-backs, and it's not going to go well, no one would have been overly surprised at that. The Oilers, they did outshoot the Blackhawks 41-30. Like I said, Fleury was fantastic. The Oilers' power play goes 1 for 4. Their penalty kill was also terrible. Their penalty kill is 31st in the NHL since the start of January. Another reason why, as I outlined, like I said, in a YouTube video, another reason why I think Dave Tippett and Jim Playfair are no longer here and are no longer on the coaching staff of the Edmonton Oilers. Instead, it is Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson coming up from Bakersfield. And I got to be honest, I love this decision. I think most people do. A lot of the fan base was clamoring for a coaching change since pretty much, halfway through December, I think, is when things started to really kick into the, okay, this team needs a spark, this team needs a change behind the bench. And a lot of the people who were clamoring for that wanted it to be Woodcroft and Manson behind the bench. You got your wish. This is a new era, in a way, starting tonight for the Edmonton Oilers, and I like it. I think this is, if we're going back to the reasons why I personally soured on Dave Tippett, I think an over-reliance on his veterans and the players that he deemed to be kind of his favorites, I think that hurt the team. Look at how many times over the last couple of years the solution was, well, just put Zach Kassian in the top 6. Just keep rolling Zach Kassian into the top 6. I'll just put McDavid and Draisaitl together. That'll fix it. And it didn't fix it. And even between the pipes, I think that last game is a really good microcosm of Dave Tippett. It made no sense to go back to Mike Smith. And actually, to his credit, he pushed the right buttons with the goalies a lot during his tenure with the Edmonton Oilers, but it made no sense to go back to Mike Smith. Yet that's his guy, so he rolled back to him. He said, we got to get Schmitty up and going. Okay, well, you had Stuart Skinner sitting on the bench, who has the best numbers out of your 3 NHL goalies this year. Why would you not go with Stuart Skinner in that situation? So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's dumb to say, but Dave Tippett went out doing what he loves best, which was playing his favorites and riding Mike Smith, right? So we'll see what Jay Woodcroft ends up doing tonight. I haven't had a chance to look at what happened down at morning skate yet today. So when we get to our lines, it will be fairly speculative stuff. But the Oilers came out flat. They fall to the Chicago Blackhawks by a score of 4-1. That is not good news when it comes to the playoff race for the Edmonton Oilers. When you look at things right now, they are currently 5th in the Pacific Division, 6 points back of the Anaheim Ducks. They do have 4 games in hand on Anaheim, though. And then they are 6 points back of the LA Kings as well for that final playoff spot in the Pacific. They do have 3 games in hand on the LA Kings. So if the Oilers win all their games in hand, they're going to be in a good spot. Winning all your games in hand and having to play pretty much every second night from here down the stretch, that's not ideal for the Oilers. But next week is a big one. They play the Sharks, like I said on the last pregame show as well. They go Sharks, Kings, Ducks, Jets next week. That's crucial. But at the same time, 2 points tonight against the New York Islanders. In a way, when you look at the standings page, it kind of means just as much as 2 points against any of those teams, right? A win is a win, and Edmonton absolutely needs 2 points tonight in Jay Woodcroft's debut. Look around the league, right? Coaching changes can spark really good things. It happened in Vancouver. Bruce Boudreau comes in. They win 7-0. I know they've kind of been average since then, but I really just think this Oilers team needs a spark. And tonight, I'm expecting them to come out of the gates faster. I think they'll play really well. I'm hoping they play a little bit physical. Like, I do think there is a little bit of guilt in the room when you sit and a head coach who's been here for 3 years ends up getting canned. I think the players really do feel that a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, there's been plenty of games this year where you sit there and go, yeah, the Oilers should come out of the gates hard, and they don't. So I think this game tonight and this first period, in a way, will tell us a lot about the Edmonton Oilers, in the sense that if they do have, some pride in their game, as my boy Chris Chalmers would say, if they're putting some pride into their work, then they'll come out of the gates hard tonight. There'll be some guys playing physical. There'll be some guys who, I'm looking at Zach Kassian's out of the lineup, but there'll be some guys in this lineup who are sitting there tonight and going, all right, my job might be on the line here. I need to come out and sort of reprove myself. It's almost like the start of the season for some players as well. It'll be interesting to see what Jay Woodcroft. Boy, that is that's going to be a hard one to kind of get out of the brain there, saying that Dave Tippett, what he's going to do with the Lions. But anyways, I'm getting off on an odd tangent now. But that's the beauty of doing these pregame shows live and by myself, is that you literally just hear exactly what I'm thinking at any given moment. But anyways, Oilers taking on the Islanders tonight. Let's get into the opposition report, courtesy of our friends at Yegburger, YEG_burger on Instagram. I know everyone is raving for their milkshake of the month. I'm going to pull it up right now like I did yesterday. Everyone said, Tyler, it's hilarious when you pull up stuff on your phone while you're live on the internet. Carrot cake Oreo milkshake is your milkshake of the month. And the burger of the month, watching it right now on their Instagram, double bacon cheese burger melt. Looks fantastic. The Islanders, they don't look fantastic. This is going to be like, a copy-paste of what we saw for the pregame show the other day. But the Islanders, 17-17-6 on the year. They got off to just a god-awful start this season when they were on that long road trip. They've also beaten the Oilers already once this year, so maybe I shouldn't be so hard on them, but they're 6-4-0 in their last 10. They are 8-7-3 on the road as well. The Islanders, they are coming off a win over the Vancouver Canucks earlier this week by a score of 6-3. They've won 2 of their last 3 games as well. This team's going to play hard. It's a Barry Trotz coach team. You know everything that comes with that. They're going to play solid defensively. They're not going to give up a ton of chances. If they do, in fact, go with the young guy, Ilya Sorokin, between the pipes, he's a pretty good goalie. And actually, goaltending's been one of the things that isn't a problem this year for the New York Islanders. Their goaltending has been solid, whether it is Sorokin or if they go with Semyon Varlamov. But Sorokin's got a 2.34 goals against average and a 924 save percentage. He's not in the Vezina conversation this year, but numbers like that are right on the cusp of being in that talk. He's just playing on a really bad team, and usually you need a good amount of clout if you want to get into the Vezina conversation. Sorokin will get there at some point, though. I'm pretty confident in that. 26 years old, 6'3", out of Russia. This guy was a third-round pick of the Islanders way back in 2014, but he's come into the NHL and he's been really good. And this is his 50th career game, actually, if he does end up getting the start for the Isles. 2.26 goals against average, 922 save percentage. This guy's going to be in the Vezina conversation for a while around the NHL. Another strong goalie to come out of Russia. So the Oilers will be in tough there. Laurent Brossoit played well. Marc-Andre Fleury played well. It wouldn't surprise me if Ilya Sorokin also comes in. He's got that ability to just steal games. Like his record this year, 14-8-5. The Islanders are a 500 team. Sorokin is 14-8-5. That says a lot about what he's able to do. He's won 4 of his last 5 starts as well. That is my main mega concern in this game for the Oilers, is that Ilya Sorokin will come in and steal a game, because the Islanders are not good offensively. Like I said, I mean, I'm looking goals for per game so far this season. The Islanders sit 29th in the NHL. When you look at goals against per game, though, in the NHL, the Islanders are a top 5 team. They're 5th in the NHL. How does that even make a lick of sense? But that's the truth. I mean, 2.63 goals against per game. This is an Islanders team that, again, Barry Trotz, Ilya Sorokin, they know how to keep pucks out of their net, is the point I'm making here on my large rambling tangent. So that's going to be tough for the Oilers tonight, is finding ways to create offense. So with that, let's get into our lines presented by Deuce Vodka. I'll speculate on the Oilers in just a second, but first, let's get into the New York Islanders lines, which are just absolutely fascinating to look at the way this team is built up front. And this is a group that had playoff hopes coming into this year. Matt Barzal will center the top line. Anders Lee is on the left side. Cal Clutterbuck is playing top line minutes for this hockey team on the right side. The Oilers cannot lose to a team that has Cal Clutterbuck on their top line. Come on. Brock Nelson, Ross Johnston, and Josh Bailey is their second line. Ross Johnston is on their second line. The Oilers cannot lose to a team that has Ross Johnston on their second line. Are you kidding me? John Gabriel Pajot with Zach Parise and Oliver Wahlstrom. Wahlstrom 2 goals in his last 5, by the way. Casey Cizikas with Matt Martin and Anthony Beauvillier. I wonder about Anthony Beauvillier as a potential trade target. His salary is high, but I wonder if the Oilers could do, if the Islanders are looking for some help on their blue line or a puck mover or something like that. I don't know, maybe Barry's a fit out there. In Anthony Beauvillier, like, he's been getting healthy scratched at times this season. He's got a fairly big contract, but he's a young guy who plays really hard. I like Beauvillier, but he might be a guy who shakes loose out on Long Island. The D pairings for the Islanders: Adam Pelech with Scott Mayfield, Zdeno Chara with Noah Dobson, Andy Green with Ryan Pulock. The top power play unit for the Islanders is Lee, Nelson, Barzal, Dobson, and Oliver Wahlstrom. I already speculated. I believe the starting goalie is going to be Ilya Sorokin, but that is not confirmed yet for the Oilers. What will Jay Woodcroft do? Because he's got some injuries to deal with on this Oilers team. Zach Kassian will miss the next 4 to 8 weeks with a broken jaw. He took a puck up high in that last game against the Blackhawks. From an Oilers perspective, I mean, Kassian wasn't bringing a ton in to this hockey team. If you think he's going to be out for the next 8 weeks, you LTIR him, which they already have. But if you think he can be LTIR'd for the rest of the regular season, that's $3.2 million you're probably pretty happy to have for around trade deadline time. So that actually, in a weird way, not that you ever obviously root for guys to get hurt, but that in a weird way might be a blessing in disguise for Ken Holland as he heads into the trade deadline. So no Zach Kassian. There's also going to be no Duncan Keith in this hockey game. He obviously crashed on the boards, and that was really, really scary as well. So hoping the best for Duncan Keith, but he is going to miss the next 2 to 4 weeks. It's a concussion. Like, he went into the boards hard, and honestly, like, when that first happened, I was concerned that, like, the stretcher was going to get brought out, and as I think a lot of people were. That was an ugly, ugly play, and Duncan Keith's actually been playing pretty well for the Oilers as well. So Niemelainen and Broberg were also on the plane up from Edmonton with Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson. I actually don't know if they're on the same plane. I just said that. But I think Brad Malone might be coming up as well. So you're already starting to see, I get that injuries play into this, obviously, but Brad Malone coming up, that's a guy Jay Woodcroft would obviously know very well, one of his better players down in the Condors. So we'll see what Woodcroft does with the lines. If I could speculate, if I could guess, I will say we're going to see McDavid, Kane, and Yamamoto, Draisaitl with McLeod and Puljujarvi, and then we'll see Nuge, Hyman, and Fogle as the third line, and then Devon Shore, Derek Ryan, and maybe we even see Brendan Perlini. Tyler Benson wouldn't surprise me either in that fourth line spot. Actually, with Jay Woodcroft, I'd say I would bet on Benson getting into the lineup, but again, I haven't seen the lines yet, so I have no idea. The D pairings: Nurse with Bouchard, and then the left side falls off a cliff after that. Broberg, Niemelainen, and Lagesson. 2 of those guys will play. I would imagine Woodcroft coming in short notice, hasn't had a ton of time to work with these guys. I would imagine you just go with the guy who's played NHL games recently. So I would imagine Lagesson gets in, and then one of Niemelainen or Broberg will draw in. They'll be playing on pairs with either Ceci or Barry. The Oilers' power play found the back of the net last night, but they really need it to get going. Nuge, Draisaitl, McDavid, Bouchard, the usual cast of characters, but they did start using Evander Kane a little bit more in that net front spot, and I'll be interested to see if that's something Woodcroft continues to do tonight. Their penalty kill needs to be much better. A part of that is goaltending as well. If your goalie is your best penalty killer, you're going to have a pretty good PK. No idea if they're going with Smith or Skinner between the pipes tonight. So those are your lines presented by Deuce Vodka. Let's get into your betting report, brought to you by our friends over at PointsBet. The Oilers are favorites in this hockey game, but honestly not as big as I thought they would be. Minus 145 on the money line. The Oilers in regulation is plus 105. The Oilers on the puck line is plus 165. I like taking Edmonton to win this game in regulation. I think they come out of the gates hot. I think the coaching change is going to spark this team as well. The over-under is set at 5.5, but your bet of the game, Oilers, regulation, plus 105, plus money on the Oilers to get a win on home ice as they look to get the ball rolling before they head out to California next week to take on the Sharks and the LA Kings. And that's about it for all the time we got. Shout out to Sherwood Ford, the Giant, our title sponsor, along with Deuce Vodka, Jägburger, and PointsBet. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk. This has been another Sherwood Ford Giant pregame show. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the Jay Woodcroft era, and we'll talk again next week.